The galaxy had rules. Even in war, there were lines no one dared to cross. One of those lines was simple: never touch the healers. Across every star system, every battlefield, the medics were untouchable. They carried no weapons, only tools to heal. Their white armbands and glowing emblems marked them as neutral. They saved the wounded, no matter the uniform, no matter the side. It was the one fragile thread of mercy that tied the galaxy together, but threads can break. On the distant colony of Hespera 9, the silence was torn by screams. The alien fleet had come not to conquer, not to enslave, but to burn. They struck first at the field hospitals, where Earth's healers worked through the night. Scalpel hands, tired eyes, soft voices calming soldiers in pain, none of it mattered. The aliens stormed the tents, their weapons cutting through the unarmed. Doctors, nurses, medics slaughtered where they stood. For the first time in generations, healers bled. News spread like fire through the human colonies. Soldiers who had seen horrors of war now wept in silence. They had fought with honor, believing healers would always be safe. But now the oath of mercy was broken. Where once soldiers fought, knowing that, win or lose, someone would be there to patch their wounds, now they looked at the stars with fear. Who would save them now? On Earth, the Council of Command met in the Great Chamber. It was a hall of shadow and steel, filled with the voices of generals, politicians, and scientists. The room trembled with anger, but also with fear. "They have taken our healers," one general said, his voice cold. "They have destroyed the last law of mercy. This is not war, it is extermination." A silence followed, heavier than any sound. The oldest member of the council finally spoke. His voice was soft, but it carried across the hall like thunder. "If they have broken the oath, then humanity must answer. But the answer they demand will cost us our souls." The council knew what he meant. Hidden beneath the oceans of Earth, in prisons older than memory, lay those who had been erased from history. Men and women who once fought for humanity, but had gone too far. They were called war criminals. Monsters in human skin, soldiers who had drowned planets, who had burned cities until only ash remained, who had looked at surrender and laughed. They were locked away, not for weakness, but for being too strong, too ruthless, too dangerous even for their own people. But now whispers began to spread. If mercy was gone, what else remained? On the front lines, human soldiers fought harder, but they knew the truth. Without healers, their strength would fade. Wounds that could have been healed now festered. Battles that might have been won turned into massacres. The aliens pressed forward, mocking humanity's pleas for honor. They wanted to see Earth broken, begging. One soldier, crouched in the ruins of a destroyed outpost, whispered to his comrade, "Do you hear it? They killed the healers. The council cannot let this go." His comrade spat blood and nodded. "They will open the cages. They have no choice." And far away, in the black cells where light never entered, the prisoners stirred. Chains rattled in the dark. Some had been silent for decades, their names erased from every record. But now, as whispers traveled even through stone, they smiled. They felt it. The galaxy was calling them again. The Council of Command argued for days. Some demanded restraint, others demanded revenge. But each time another report arrived of burned hospitals, dead medics, and silenced healers, the balance shifted. Mercy had no meaning anymore. One night, a transmission reached Earth. An alien commander, his face twisted with pride, sneered into the camera. "Your healers cried for mercy as we cut them down. But mercy is weakness, and weakness dies." The chamber shook with fury. The council voted. The decision was made. The old prisons, buried in the depths of the Atlantic, lit up for the first time in centuries. Steel doors groaned open. Guards, armed with weapons that could tear through starships, stood trembling as the prisoners emerged. They did not look like men and women. Their eyes carried no humanity, only hunger. Hunger for battle. Hunger for blood. One of them, tall and scarred, stepped into the light. His voice was rough, broken by years of silence. He looked at the guards and smiled. "So," he whispered, "you finally need us again." On the battlefields, human soldiers lifted their heads as strange new ships appeared. They did not carry the symbols of healers or medics. They carried something else, a darker mark, a warning to the galaxy. Humanity had answered the broken oath. And the answer was monsters. The prisons of Earth were not like any other in the galaxy. They were built not to hold thieves or rebels, but to contain something far worse. Beneath the crushing weight of the Atlantic Ocean, deep in black corridors where light was rare, the war criminals waited. Each prisoner had a history written in blood. They were once champions of Earth, the strongest warriors humanity had ever produced. But power without limits comes with horror. They had drowned entire worlds to win wars. They had crushed surrendering armies simply to prove dominance. They had no mercy, no restraint. The galaxy feared them, but so did Earth itself. That was why they were buried here, forgotten, erased, chained in silence. Until now, the Council's order spread through the prison gates like wildfire. Doors that had not opened in decades shuddered. The sound of machinery echoed through tunnels that had been quiet for generations. Guards stood ready, their hands shaking on weapons designed to kill even the strongest human. Some guards whispered to each other, their voices trembling. "Why are we doing this?" One asked. "Because the galaxy killed our healers," another answered. "And now Earth has nothing left to lose." The first cell opened with a screech. Inside stood a man taller than any soldier. His skin carried old scars, and his eyes burned with hunger. He stepped forward, chains falling around his feet. The guards flinched, but he did not attack. He only smiled, a cold, dangerous smile. "I knew you would come back for me," he said. His voice was calm, but it chilled the guards more than any scream. In another chamber, a woman with silver hair lifted her head. She had once commanded fleets that turned oceans into fire. She had been called the Drowned Queen by enemies who cursed her name as their planets burned. Her eyes opened, and the water dripping from her chains seemed to freeze in the air. "Finally," she whispered, "the galaxy remembers who we are." One by one, the monsters stepped into the light. Some laughed, others stood silent, but all of them shared one thing, a hunger that could not be contained. The Council knew they had made a deal with the devil. But humanity was desperate. The healers were gone, and mercy was buried with them. Earth had chosen survival, no matter the cost, as the prisoners were unchained. Their names were spoken again, names that had been banned, names that parents once whispered to children to scare them into obedience. Now those names would return to the stars. The tall, scarred man, once known as Varric Kane, raised his head to the Council screen. His voice thundered, "Give us ships, give us weapons. Point us at the ones who dared touch your healers, and we will give you fear. We will give you blood." The Council agreed. But in their hearts they wondered, would these criminals ever go back into chains again? Soon, the first fleet of black ships rose from Earth. Unlike the shining silver of healer ships or the clean white of defense cruisers, these vessels were jagged, sharp, and cruel. They were built for war without rules, engines roaring like beasts awakened from slumber. Across the galaxy, watchers trembled as signals confirmed the monsters of Earth were free again. On the alien worlds that had slaughtered the healers, whispers spread faster than fire. Commanders who had laughed at human weakness now felt a chill run through their bones. They remembered the old wars. They remembered what humans were capable of when they removed all restraint. And they remembered the names of the war criminals, the ones even aliens had prayed never to meet again. A soldier on the alien front whispered to his captain, "What if the stories are true? What if they bring back the demons?" The captain silenced him, but fear was already growing in his heart. Back on Earth, soldiers who had lost everything watched the Black Fleet rise into the sky. Some cheered, some cried, and some turned away, unsure if they had just traded one enemy for another. But the monsters smiled. They were free, and freedom meant only one thing, war. Varric Kane, standing at the helm of his ship, looked out into the endless stars. He whispered to himself, almost lovingly, "The galaxy killed our healers. Now it will learn what humanity becomes without mercy." The fleet vanished into the void, leaving Earth behind. Their chains were broken. Their names would soon be remembered, and the galaxy would tremble once more. The Black Fleet slipped through the stars like shadows. No banners, no emblems of mercy, no promises of surrender. Only weapons, sharpened and waiting. The first target was chosen with care. It was the world of Calrith, a fortress colony where the alien armies had gathered after their slaughter of the healers. They were proud, loud, and careless. From orbit, their cities glowed like jewels against the planet's dark oceans. Commanders laughed as they planned their next attack, certain humanity was broken. Then the sky above them split open. The human fleet arrived in silence. No warning, no demands, no signal of peace. The black ships descended like predators from the void. Engines howled, turning night into fire. The first strike was not meant to conquer. It was meant to terrify. Varric Kane stood on the bridge of his ship, his eyes fixed on the burning world below. His hands moved like a conductor leading an orchestra of destruction. "Target the command centers," he said calmly. "Leave their farms, leave their homes, but take their pride." The order was carried out with precision. Alien warships, massive and proud, were torn apart by weapons they had never faced before. Missiles sliced through shields as if they were glass. Beams of white fire turned fortresses into ash. Entire squadrons vanished in silence before they even understood what they were facing. The drowned queen's ship emerged from the void like a blade. She directed her fleet not at soldiers, but at the rivers and seas of Calrith. Her weapons boiled oceans, drowning armies in waves of steam and flame. The aliens screamed as their proud ships sank into the very waters they had once controlled. On the ground, alien soldiers who had once mocked Earth's weakness ran through their burning streets. They shouted for orders, but their commanders were gone, their cities collapsing around them. Above the chaos, massive screens lit up with the face of Varric Kane. His voice echoed across the planet. "You killed our healers," he said. His words were simple, but they carried more weight than any threat. "Now we kill your hope." Then the feed cut, leaving only smoke and silence. The strike was quick. Within hours, Calrith was crippled. Not destroyed, no, that would have been too easy. The war criminals left it alive, but broken. The aliens were forced to look upon their burned cities, their drowned armies, and know that Earth's monsters had returned. Word spread faster than light. Across the galaxy, empires shivered. Alien leaders who had once boasted of their strength now met in secret, their voices shaking. The name Varric Kane became a curse on alien lips once more. The drowned queen's symbol was etched into memory, a reminder of terror. And yet this was only the beginning. On Earth, soldiers received the news with mixed hearts. Some cheered in victory, believing the healers had been avenged. Others turned pale, realizing the monsters had not changed. They were still as cruel as the stories claimed. One young recruit whispered to his commander, "What happens when they run out of aliens to kill?" The commander said nothing. The council, watching from their hidden chamber, understood the danger. They had set the monsters free, and now those monsters were rewriting the rules of war. On the alien worlds, survivors spoke of horrors. Soldiers told of fleets that moved too fast, of weapons too sharp, of enemies who laughed as they slaughtered. Civilians described skies that turned black, seas that boiled, cities that collapsed in moments. They spoke of voices that offered no surrender, only judgment, and everywhere the same whisper grew. The healers are gone. Now humanity brings monsters. The aliens who had first struck the healers realized too late the cost of their actions. They had wanted humanity weak. Instead, they had unleashed a nightmare. But deep in the silence of space, Varric Kane looked beyond Calrith. His eyes narrowed at the endless stars, and his voice rumbled through the bridge. "This is only the first. The galaxy must learn. When you take mercy from us, you leave us with nothing but monsters. The drowned queen stood beside him, her gaze cold. "And monsters," she said softly, "never stop until the stars themselves burn." The Black Fleet moved on, leaving Calrith behind. The world still lived, but it would never forget, and the galaxy, watching in fear, now understood. Earth's first strike was not the end. It was the beginning of something darker than war. Calrith burned in memory long after the fires went out. Survivors wandered its ruined cities, whispering about ships that came like shadows and weapons that tore the sky apart. Mothers told their children to stay silent at night, as if even a cry could bring the monsters back. The story spread faster than light. Fleets carried news across empires. Traders repeated the tale in hidden markets. Prisoners in alien dungeons muttered it to each other in the dark. Everywhere, one message echoed. Humanity had released what it had sworn to bury. The galaxy trembled. Alien rulers who once mocked Earth now met in secret. They replayed the footage of Varric Kane's face again and again, his calm voice delivering judgment. "You killed our healers. Now we kill your hope." His words haunted them, more frightening than the fire he unleashed. On one alien capital, a council gathered in panic. Their generals argued about building stronger fleets, but the civilians screamed louder. "How do you fight something that feels no mercy?" one governor asked. No one answered. Some empires considered peace, even surrender. Others plotted alliances against Earth, but none trusted each other. The monsters had done more than break armies. They had broken trust. Meanwhile, inside the Black Fleet, the war criminals grew stronger. Each battle gave them joy, not just victory. They relished the fear, feeding on it. Ships once meant to defend now hunted without hesitation. The drowned queen stood on her bridge, watching her crew work in silence. To her, fear was an ocean, and she was its queen. She whispered to herself, "Every empire drowns the same." But not all of Earth celebrated. On the homeworld, the people argued in streets and homes. Some wept with pride, saying the healers were avenged. Others whispered uneasily that Earth had become something unrecognizable. "We were healers once," a mother told her son. "Now we are the disease." In military academies, young soldiers asked questions their teachers could not answer. "What happens when the monsters decide we are weak too?" one student asked. The silence that followed was heavier than war. The Council of Command tried to maintain control. In official speeches, they called the war criminals heroes of necessity. They reminded the people that aliens had broken the oath first. But in private chambers, the councillors argued. Some wanted to chain the monsters again after victory. Others warned it would already be too late. One councillor stood, his hands trembling. "We freed them," he said. "We cannot unfree them. The galaxy trembles. But so should we." On the front lines, alien commanders abandoned their boldness. Where once they attacked without fear, now they hesitated. Entire fleets refused to meet the black ships in battle. Colonies fled at the first signal of their approach. In every star system, shadows seemed darker, and silence felt like a warning. The monsters noticed. Varric Kane walked the halls of his ship like a king returning to his throne. Soldiers saluted him not out of loyalty, but out of fear. He felt it, and he welcomed it. "Fear makes them obey," he told his captains, "and obedience makes them weak." But deep inside him, something darker stirred. He'd been caged too long. Now every victory felt like breath after suffocation. He did not want to stop. He did not plan to stop. In one battle, a fleet of aliens tried to surrender before the fight began. Their ships powered down, their voices pleading across the comms. For a moment, the human soldiers hesitated. Surrender was part of war. But Varric Kane's voice cut through their hesitation. "No," he said. "Mercy died with our healers." And the fleet was erased. That single act sent shockwaves across the galaxy. It was no longer about revenge for healers. It was about something worse, a war with no limits, no lines, no return. Civilians on distant worlds prayed that Earth would remember kindness, but the prayers went unanswered. The monsters wrote their own rules now. On Earth, a healer's memorial stood in the heart of the capital. Thousands gathered each day, laying flowers for the doctors, nurses, and medics who had been slaughtered. The names glowed across endless walls of light. Children traced the letters with their hands, asking their parents, "Will healers ever come back?" The parents had no answer. At night, when the crowd was gone, a lone soldier stood at the memorial, staring at the names. His voice was soft, almost broken. "We wanted to save them. But now, who will save us from ourselves?" The galaxy trembled at humanity's monsters. But on Earth, in the quiet corners of conscience, another fear was rising, the fear that monsters once unleashed could never be caged again. And above it all, the Black Fleet moved on, silent and merciless, carving its path through the stars. The war was ending, not because the aliens surrendered, but because they no longer had the strength to fight. Across the stars, the Black Fleet had left scars too deep to heal. Worlds once proud now stood in ruins. Fleets that had once stretched across the horizon now lay scattered like broken bones in the void. Entire species whispered the same word when they spoke of Earth: monsters. Humanity had won, but victory did not feel like triumph. On Calrith, where the first strike had fallen, silence ruled the streets. Survivors lived like shadows, haunted by the memory of skies on fire. On distant colonies, alien children cried at the sound of thunder, mistaking it for the roar of human warships. The galaxy had seen Earth's strength, but what it remembered was Earth's fury. In the Council of Command, the leaders sat in uneasy silence. Reports of victory filled their screens, but no one cheered. A general spoke first, his voice low. "The war is over. The healers are avenged. The enemy will never dare break the oath again." An older counselor shook her head. "No, the oath is dead. And so is mercy. We did not save the healers. We buried them under oceans of fire." The chamber fell silent. None could argue. On Earth, the people tried to celebrate. Streets filled with flags, fireworks lit the skies, but beneath the laughter was unease. Families remembered the healers who had once been their shield of hope. Now their memory was stained with the blood of countless worlds. In quiet corners, veterans whispered about what they had seen. Surrendering fleets erased, civilian worlds drowned, monsters smiling as they burned cities. Some soldiers asked if humanity was safer now, or if it had simply replaced one enemy with another. Among the Black Fleet, the war criminals stood as legends reborn. Varric Kane was no longer a prisoner. He was a name spoken with both fear and worship. The drowned queen walked through her ship like a ruler of the void, her crew kneeling in silence. To them, this was not vengeance. It was destiny. But not everyone in the fleet shared their hunger. Some ordinary soldiers, assigned to serve under the war criminals, had begun to feel hollow, and whispered to his comrade, "We avenged the healers, but we are not healers anymore. We are destroyers!" His comrade gave no answer. There were no answers left. The aliens who survived tried to rebuild, but even in peace they looked to the stars with dread. They knew Earth could strike again at any moment, and no treaty, no surrender, no plea for mercy would stop it. Humanity had proven something the galaxy had always feared, that humans were not only strong but relentless. One alien elder, speaking to his people, said, "We thought humans were healers, builders, dreamers. We thought they had limits, but now we see the truth. When you take away their mercy, there is nothing left but monsters, and yet within humanity itself, there was one ghost that refused to die, the ghost of the healers, in the capital of Earth. At the memorial of the fallen medics, the walls glowed with thousands of names. Families came every day to remember. Children asked their parents why the healers had died and why no one had replaced them. The answers were always broken. One night, a young healer in training, standing before the glowing names, whispered into the silence, "We needed you. We still need you. But you are gone. Tears ran down her face as she pressed her hand against the wall. If Mercy has died, then who will heal us? Her voice was lost in the night, but the question echoed across humanity. Soldiers asked it. Families asked it. Even some counselors asked it. Humanity had won, but at the cost of something it could never regain. In deep space, Varric Kane stood on the bridge of his flagship. The galaxy was quiet now, too afraid to fight. He looked out at the stars, his expression unreadable. Behind him, the drowned queen spoke softly. We gave them victory, but they do not thank us. They fear us. Kane's voice was calm. Good, fear keeps them silent. Fear keeps them alive. She tilted her head. And us? For the first time, Varric Kane did not answer. His eyes remained fixed on the stars, but in their reflection there was something hollow. Something even monsters could not hide, because deep inside, even he knew the truth. Humanity had not only avenged its healers, it had become something the healers themselves would never have recognized. The ghost of Mercy haunted every victory. It whispered through ruined cities. It lingered in the halls of the council. It lived in the eyes of children who no longer dreamed of saving lives, but of surviving fear. The galaxy trembled at the monsters of Earth, but Earth trembled too, not from enemies, but from itself. And as the Black Fleet drifted deeper into the stars, its shadows swallowing the light, one question remained, unanswered and eternal. When Mercy is gone, what is left of humanity?